Good evening, everyone, and thanks very, very much for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope this is going to be insightful for you, because it is my approach to life that I find every circumstance is insightful and guides me without exception, and that's a lot to do with acceptance. Yes, mysticism. Yes, what on earth is this? For me, it is the foundation of my creative art, and I think all creativity itself. Why art for me? Why mysticism? And I'll hope to answer those questions in the course of my talk. I think inspiration comes to oneself fluidly and at best when one is open with non-judgmentalism. That can be very hard, because I think with the knocks and hurts that we face in modern life and the experience that we accrue, it almost encourages us to be extremely judgmental. And that process of judgmentalism actually begins to narrow our experience. And in narrowing it, we can become almost inevitably blinkered. And I think certainly for me, that doesn't seem like a route to personal happiness. So I think that non-judgmentalism is the fulcrum for a successful vision. So why art for me? Certainly I was aware of picture making and its effects on me and its effects on my environment when I was very young in junior school. And I think for all of us at a young age, we are childlike artists who are happy creators in the sandbox, in the classroom, with filthy fingers and paint smeared everywhere. And even when it comes to other skills like telling a story or singing in front of other people, everything seems to work perfectly for children. And of course, I am generalizing, because for some children, life is a very cruel experience that has long-term effects on the adult. So I acknowledge that not all life is benevolent or happy or peaceful for people. So yes, I've thought long and hard about this. Why art for me? Why has it had such a permanent and constant influence on me, a calling, if you will? Well, I think that I have to look quite carefully at why it starts at a young age. And some people leave creativity behind because for all sorts of reasons, but I was aware that certainly acceptance and popularity from my compatriots and my teachers was a thing. It's something I became quickly aware of, along with the joy of creating pictures. And I think what won the day, I think, and yes, it has taken literally years for me to make peace with myself and the world, and to realize that that the joy of art, the joy of picture making, the joy of creating visions, visual images, is the paramount thing. And how did I get there? How did it happen that acknowledging now the joy and happiness I find in creating simply, how did that get to be the guiding star, the guiding light for me? I think it was through discovering a dissatisfaction with being a citizen of the modern world, that it had so much to offer, but yet there was always a nameless yearning that no matter what I did in life, there was a dissatisfaction and an uncomfortable sense that what I was seeing and experiencing wasn't enough, that there was something else behind it, an invisible world. And it may well have become much more present in my awareness when my father died of a massive unsuspected heart attack when I was 17 years old. And the sort of brevity of life, it's the speed with which one grows up and becomes an adult, and life races, seems to race ever faster for us, even today. Having my father die at 17, when I was 17, really forced home questions about what the purpose of life was, what it was about, what was I about, how could I actually proceed with my life in the absence of such a loving father. And sure, it's led to issues of accidental abandonment. I might have issues with people accidentally abandoning, benignly abandoning me, not with any malice aforethought. But anyway, the thing was, of course, conversations with my father opened up questions about the purpose of life and the meanings of life and what it was to be alive. What were you going to do? And it wasn't really about changing the world. It was about finding truths that would bring peace to the disquiet that I felt in life. So, and it has taken a long, long time for art to be its own thing, for the present work that I draw and paint to be of itself precisely the only concern, that to allow the work itself to emerge and grow and then show me something. The purpose of picture making seems to be, or at least its function, what it does is it shows me that I am part of a process, and that the work opens up a new, not just a new perspective, but a new awareness. And I think over time, knowing how hard it was, even in my mid-20s, to create, I had lots of time, but I could not find ideas to paint, and it was so frustrating. And I think alongside that came this growing sense of dissatisfaction, of disconnect, of being an outsider. And I think the inner journey of creating does make a withdrawal from life. It creates a withdrawal to create. And that sense of isolation and separateness was increasingly disturbing. And I simply just I burned a lot of canvases. I threw away my paints and brushes. I really didn't, I thought it was art that I hated, but actually it was me. I was just dissatisfied with myself and felt so incompetent that I couldn't find the vision to explore and paint. And that is when I think the mystic journey really picked up a pace. And whilst mysticism, what is this? And yes, there's a lot out there to tell us what it is, but it is an attitude and a way of life, a simplicity of heart, where one is working particularly with the idea that everything one's experiencing is precisely what you need right now. So the sense of complaining or being in a conflict with oneself and one's situation and one's circumstances is a really dividing, separating experience. So it's not just positive thinking, it's a sense of a growing conviction that there is a purposefulness to existence, and that where I am is exactly where I need to be. So conflict is diminished, and that the simplicity, that it's not so much that you throw you throw away all your goods and chattels and you put on a loincloth and meditate. No, no, no. It's nothing to do with how much you own or how much you do with your days. It's about a simplicity in your mind, and you're centered in your heart. It's a place of feeling, and it's not something that's organic or romantic and unstructured. But it is that if the circumstances are precisely where I need to be without conflict, but cooperation in essence, then that sense is a place that can only result in the emergence of positive things. It's not just nice thinking, good thinking. It's not just positivity, but that the situation itself, because it's where I need to be right now, and it is the best possible position for me to be in, then I am cooperating, and it generates positive steps and the next step and so on. I mean, it's not a life of prescription. The mystic life is not a life of prescription. There's not things you need to do. Prayers, yoga, meditations, nothing. It is not a prescriptive. It is a sense of being present, and the acts are acts of love, of union, of a joining. Yeah, sure, that trust can be a hard thing. That the sense to seek to control what you're producing, how you're conducting your life, how you're relating to those around you, is based on fear, and the sense that one uses one's own experience to affirm that you're going to get hurt, so you've got to be careful, you've got to be guarded, to be self-protective, to be reductionist, because sooner or later something bad's going to happen and it's not going to be nice. And even though that may seem logical in the light of our experience, it's not holistically beneficial. Because if experience is expansive and creative, and that is a guaranteed in the sense that all ideas will come to you if you trust, you're open to the possibilities because you're not in conflict, and that you only need take account of the present situation you find yourself in creating art, talking to people, being the person you are. That means that only the present is something to focus on. There's no sense that one needs to worry about next week, next month, have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, have aspirations. Yes, there is an important aspect to willing a change in yourself and your environment. Life can be and ought to be shaped. And I don't think we necessarily should close the doors and say, well, I can't change because I've got this amount of debt, or I don't have enough money for buying art materials, or I've got a mortgage, I've got payments to make, and I can't change. But yes, we can. Neither should we expect that because we might not be where we are, might not be in a place that we like, therefore willing a change is appropriate. But again, this is to re-establish a form of conflict with your environment. So this way of life, this perspective, this viewpoint has been so helpful for me in being a functioning creative person, a healthfully creative person, that I find myself now having infinitely more spontaneous ideas emerging that call for my attention. And there isn't the sense that, my ideas are going to dry up. That's not possible. Yes, if I encourage attitudes about doubt and control and worry and anxiety, yes, those will start to erode the gains that I've made as a creative person. And bringing what I imagine the world expects of me to my studio before I even finish a piece will undermine my concentration and undermine the success of the work. So yes, you need to almost be hermetic. Hermeticism, let's take the analogy of the thermos flask. It is hermetically sealed within it to keep the warmth there. So one has to be discerning in allowing how much of the world can call upon you. How many followers do I have? Did I get likes today? Who shared my work? It's not easy, but those things are not in the studio. And so I think that whilst trust can be hard, it's not something you can cultivate. There is a process here of understanding the controls that we put in place for legitimate fears based in our experience. And that can gradually be thought about and considered, and carefully one begins to shape one's life to become a happier, successful person. Nor should we immediately think, oh, well, success, what is that? I think a lot of these things should be left behind. And the mystic life is about a considered editing of healthful or enhancing elements in one's consciousness and unhelpful ones. It's not that you deny parts of yourself. You are the creature you are. Everything that you are is precisely okay. You're not lesser because you don't think you're worth it. You will do entirely for the present. You are, what's it, in some of the ancient mystery religions of the Mediterranean, let each be tested according to their nature. In other words, there is nothing that life throws up that will be beyond your ability to cope with, deal with, manage, and negotiate. You are strong enough. And there's a visualization that if you're sitting on a chair and on your knees is a golden crown. And you could ask of yourself, why have I not attended my own coronation and set the crown upon my head? What is it about me that feels I am not worth becoming beautiful for, good for? I think the reason why a lot of the narratives of mythology and folklore inform my work, for me, I found it incredibly particular and inspiring, and also affirmations for the mystic life. The initiates of the Orphic mysteries were taught that the key phrase, the key affirmation, I am a child of earth and the starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone. And when the soul of the person, when the person died and the soul made its journey and emerged from the underworld into the light, the inevitable journey of transcendence, they met guardians of a sacred spring. And the spring, the foremost spring, was called the waters of Lethe, of forgetfulness. And a little further on, down the hill in the Golden Valley, was the waters of remembrance. And the key to understanding, the key to being allowed past the guardians to drink the waters of remembrance, of Mnemosyne, was the phrase, I'm a child of earth and the starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone. It speaks of identification. So the crown on one's head, being enough, being worthy enough, being utterly enabled to function as a human being. Everything's in place and things can be changed. And so this idea that I identify as a child of earth, I am of this earth and of my fellow human beings, but I'm also of the starry heaven, the unchanging stars that wheeled about the quiet poles were a constancy. I am of the unchanging stars, and my race is of heaven alone. I identify with the invisible world that often and mostly I cannot see, not with these eyes, but the invisible world informs me and is part of my life. So the Orphic initiates were mystics. And when Socrates says, know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, it's not the self of necessarily of your character. It's the potential of what you really truly are, to become that which I am meant to be that which I am meant to be. So the present informs me and has all the required information. So it's a cooperation without judgment, and that in that sense, it has been a journey for me. The nameless yearning I spoke of earlier has changed ever so gradually toward this present time. And I am not used to sharing these ideas. I find that often apart from my partner and children, my life is a solitary one. And I acknowledge that that is not often the best way of living, but that sharing like this is a vital part of being a human. And that the bonds we make, in a sense, we are the people we know. Each is in his own self that which defines all others. You are the significator, the emblem for all people. So in that sense, anything you do is not lost in the cacophony of the crowd. You know what you do. It is unique in every sense, in the infinite small. It is unique. Never happened before in this combination. Never said, I have newly made pictures, newly made ideas. A lot of this, everything is borrowed, everything you've read, everything you've experienced, where amongst all that you are, all that you've read, seen, done, thought, been told, listened, where are you in that? Because we kind of newly make, newly edit, newly combine things that have already been done. But the thing that's different is we have taken it, sifted it, woven it into something that has never happened before. And that itself is miraculous, considering the sheer amount of humans that are on the planet. That uniqueness is still at your fingertips. So I find this miraculous, and that the miraculous is present. That nature, or the unfolding of life, can be so original that I couldn't have written it, that I couldn't have imagined last year that I would be sitting here in this way with these new drawings, speaking to you and finding these ideas emerging. I find it a deeply moving experience, one that I know is going to change me completely. And I wake up tomorrow and feel different because I've shared, not because I've shared in some vain, glorious way or some egotistical way, but it reflects back at me a sense of being in the right place, blessed by the present circumstances, and that the inevitability of things is moving forward. Tomorrow, everything can be new. I can be new because the sun rises. And even though at first sight, there's a rhythm to life and a mechanical drudge sometimes, that one can get caught up in that concern. Even if I think I'll do the same thing tomorrow, walking the dogs, for example, it will not be the same footsteps, not the same dogs, not the same air, not the same weather. And I often go for long walks, which I've got greatly thankful for the dogs, because it allows me to be, to eccentrically walk in the moors and recite poetry and scraps of songs and mantras from, I'm not talking about, Om Mani Padme Om mantras. I'm talking about a sense of books that I've read, things that my father told me. He liked to recite Shakespeare. I've not forgotten some of the things he said. He said them often enough, but it's a joy. The sense of on a walk can emerge changes in consciousness so unexpected that I bring them back. And in the studio, if I was to draw the young Helena Blavatsky, for example, 10 times, and in the drawings, the sense that the spirit of Blavatsky is aware of what I'm doing, whether or not that's just a fancy that is no basis in reality or not, even if that idea only reflects back upon me, I know that the sense of embodiment, whether it's internal or external, will make the drawing more powerful. And that is really unexpected and a trifle weird. That the eyes do more than just dull, dry pencil on a sheet of paper. And yes, the eyes being windows of the soul, as we know. What on earth does that mean? That something, an inescapable knowing about you and knowing that you know about me, is seen in the eyes. And so I think for portraiture, I always start only with the eyes. So this band here, I'll usually draw first before anything else. And I'll spend an awful lot of time on that. It's not a classic way of working. It's probably, it can add huge challenges to trying to gain a likeness. But this is new work, and it's really strange when I find that the drawing seems to take on a life of its own that cannot just be summed up by an illusion, a three-dimensional illusion on a surface. So where then will I be next month? Ought that to be a consideration? Well, I don't think so. I used a phrase from the Orphic Mysteries earlier on in the talk, and Orpheus is an oracular deity in the mythology. This sense of the present being oracular. There is information in my present that will enable me to step forward all around, like the key signature of a stave of music. There is an unfolding, and I have confidence in seeing that in my life, that it's an inevitable thing. It's not possible for me to be stagnating. And even if I allowed that, yes, the mundane can undermine my composure, and when is the change coming? When might I not have, I don't know, a sense of debt-free, happy life with security and warmth. But hey, none of these things have meaning unless I give them meaning. I shouldn't build a nemesis or a tool with which to beat myself. You are the royal personage in your life. The subjects that surround you, the circumstances, can show us things, show us the way forward. There is a process underway, and it has so much going for it. And that the trust in the now is the way in which the art emerges, and the best art that I've ever done. And I think the mystic life has enabled me to appreciate that only that if the art is there to teach me first, before I consider showing it to my family and friends and then the internet and a gallery, that's only a part of a process. But firstly, it's there for me. It's there for itself, an embodiment of something. And then it's there for me to teach me, to show me where the art's going and why. Why is it going that way? That can be a question, but again, if the present is the affirmation, then it's not going to be sullied by concerning myself where I might exhibit next. So the notion of being an artist provokes certain ideas about whether If I'm not exhibiting, I must be a failure in some way. If nobody's buying my work, okay, so I think, thanks for saying that. It's about 5 minutes left. Oh, wow. I can't believe how quick that time's passed. So if there's any questions at all, please, you can ask them. That's a really nice one, Jay. The idea is that we have work its life, vibrancy, and voice. Oh, soul songs, Jessica. That's beautiful. It's true that if there is such a thing as insight, truth, that ancestral knowledge is written in our genes, then allowing for that, being even positively neutral, is fertile ground, in a sense. If one finds it difficult to believe in invisible spirits, my father or my mother, both dead, that they are, I am the vanguard of posterity. I am at the forefront of all the intention of my forebears. And you can bet they are rooting for me, as they're rooting for everybody they love. Love transcends all pain, and the great beyond. Don't forget that ancestor worship is a huge part of religious experience today in the Far East. And I think I said earlier that we're creatures of convenience. If things were no use to us, we would have dumped them long ago. So positively neutral. If you find the mystic life so weird and odd and impossible, just be a positively neutral at the very least, and it will grow into your life. And we are in the process of eking out certitudes. In a way, certainty, not faith. Enshrined trust, not doubts and fear. Jay says, when you're in the mode, is there a way to differentiate between what is coming from within as an expression or without as an expression of something else, using you as a vessel? Yes, well, because we know that consciousness is fluid, consciousness changes all the time, is the fringes of our consciousness affected by invisible beings of beauty and love? Well, it's a really cool idea. It's an affirming idea that there is a benevolent arms around me, even just the spirits of my father and my mother. Of course, they're rooting for me. So being positively neutral to that is a lovely idea. And as you nurture these things, they will unfold and blossom in your experience. And Misha says, did I have periods of longer pauses in my art life? Yes, absolutely. I abandoned art at different times in my life. In my talk in art and healing tomorrow, I'll be covering some of this this challenge about abandonment in art and banishing art from myself and why I did that and what happened after I did that. So that's a talk for tomorrow. Thanks so much, Misha. I'll in a way that sort of like gives me an idea for tomorrow's talk as well. So I really appreciate that. How are we doing for time then?
We've got until 10:02, so about 7 more minutes of questions. So if anybody has any more questions, okay, please do put them in the chat.
Alexandra asks, as a committed practitioner, printmaker in the early stages, I wonder about how and where to start with putting more of myself into my work. Yes, I would say that, is it possible not to have yourself in the work automatically? you're committed to the work, you're committed to the emergence of a vision. And what's so beautiful about printmaking is that it is, for a start, dirty, inky, tactile. It involves all sorts of test prints and rubbing and reprinting and squeezing out the idea. It's quite analogous to the process of hearing advice from the invisible world. The possibility that that's happening, that like a radio frequency, I'm tuning in. In printmaking, as in many other art forms, creativity is like seen through a glass darkly, and an ephemeral, almost like a tearing of the veil. Gradually, you begin to see what needs to be written, sung, conveyed, printed, drawn, scraped, sculpted. And I never exclude the computer world that build structures that result in beautiful buildings, that build structures in the architecture of software. These are huge, elegant processes. Don't ever lose the notion that the more you do art, the more beautifully sensitized you become. And that, in a sense, is mystic meditation. It's inevitable. Johanna, the inner pressure of needing, Misha again, the inner pressure of needing a feedback and recognition. I do, yes, indeed, I do let expression for the sake of expressing. That there's a lot that's secondary to the process. The joy of the vision and the emerging picture itself might actually be all that's necessary, because if the gift of creating is for myself in order to facilitate a change, polish the facets of my soul, become more joyous, positive, share the positivity, be an incandescent light somehow. Why not have these dreams of wonderment? They're open, they're possible, they're there for us. Channeling things via your being, irregardless if it reaches anybody. Yes, being a conduit for ideas. In a way, it is guaranteed there will always be somebody who is there to hear what you have to say, waiting. It may fall on dull ears and dull eyes for long enough, but in amongst there'll be people who will get it, who will get you and be enriched in the getting thereof, of what you are. And you cannot help but have that in the work. That's what's really wonderful about original art, original material. You are trading your soul. You embody your work as an executor of it. As you execute it, you embody it. And that has as much power as you are willing to let it have. And Misha, prior to losing your father at 17, you did not question the meaning of your life. Well, no, I remember long chats with my dad when I reached some level of cognizance, 12, 13 onwards. I was having long chats with my dad and questions, and he was a questioning man anyway. He was a traditional Christian, and he could not just accept the Christian story without question. And he brought that inquiry, that inquiring mind to me. Certainly, I remember, don't just accept the givens. Dig deeper, in essence.